Hi, everyone. I hope you are well. I miss you very much, I'm sure. Right now, I'll be on my way to climbing Mount Whitney. So let's work hard, and I can't wait to reward you with another little prize when I get back. So let's work hard and be good for the substitute, as I know you will be. Okay, so let me share my screen with you. Today, we are going to be starting a new lesson. This is lesson 8. Let me start my timer to make sure I know I'm on task. Okay, so this is lesson 8, evidence to support a point of view. And we've been thinking about point of view, and the point of view is how, whose perspective is the story told from? And different stories have focus on different people's point of view. So we will begin reading a new narrative from the book called My Story by Rosa Parks. And have any of you ever heard of Rosa Parks? Okay, so for those of you who have heard of Rosa Parks, we're just going to have a little bit of a reminder. Our learning goals for today are: I can identify the evidence Rosa Parks brings to support her point that segregation was unjust. Unjust means unfair. I can present my name narrative and display my graphic. I can give my classmates specific positive feedback on their name narratives, and I can write narratives containing evidence that supports points of view. We might be revising our narrative a little bit today, but I don't think we'll be sharing them as much until I get back from where I'm going to be. So now let's continue on. Now, before we begin, there are a couple vocabulary words, and you're going to have to say them in your mind instead of out loud this time. But I want you to think the words public money. That's the first word I'd like to teach you. Public money. These are government funds. This is money that the government gives people for some reason. Sometimes it might be for a major catastrophe, say a tornado or hurricane, or sometimes it might be in the form of money to buy food if someone can't afford the food in their household. So that's public money. The next word is plantation. Can you think plantation? A plantation is a large farm on which the laborers usually are not the owners. And there were some pretty big plantations in the South around the time of the Civil War, mainly cotton or tobacco. The next word is overseer. An overseer is a supervisor that makes sure that people are on track. Civil rights is the next word. Protections from discrimination and other unjust treatment. And the last one is Caucasian. And Caucasian is a fancy word to mean white person. Okay, so we are going to read aloud and partner read the introduction to Rosa Parks, My Story and Step by Step, and not just another little girl from My Story. Okay, so let's continue on. All right, would you please turn in your book to page in your reader? So this time you're going to turn in your reader to page 28. I'll give you a moment to do that. 28. And I know you can't see the slideshow. That's why I want you to look at it. Now, remember, the substitute's going to be walking around to make sure that you are on task. And we're going to read about Rosa Parks. Introduction. Well, this is the introduction to Rosa Parks, My Story and Step by Step. Okay, top of page 28. In 1954, in the case of Brown versus Board of Education, the United States Supreme Court ruled that the Constitution does not permit laws requiring the separation of African Americans from whites. So at the time that Rosa Parks was alive, it was common to separate white children from Black children in the classroom. There were separate classrooms for them. Before then, however, such laws were very common, especially in the South, where African Americans often had to use separate bathrooms, ride in separate train cars, and attend separate schools. This forced separation of the races was known as segregation. In theory, the separate African American facilities were supposed to be equal to those provided to whites, but this was hardly ever so. In the case of education, the results of segregation were especially harsh. Many state governments provided no support to African American schools, leading to many African American children receiving a very poor education. The next two personal narratives are by African Americans who grew up during the era of segregation. This should be interesting. Rosa Parks' memoir. A memoir is a book someone writes about their memories of their life. Rosa Parks' My Story, written by Jim Haskins, describes her childhood in rural Alabama, where African American children attended a rundown one-room schoolhouse, while the whites in the area went to a very modern school that Alabama paid for. Parks also writes about her efforts to fight segregation, including a very famous act of protest on a public bus. That might trigger some people's memory of who Rosa Parks is. Bertie Bowman, the author of Step by Step, also grew up in the South during segregation. At the age of 13, he moved to Washington, D.C., and despite widespread prejudice against African Americans, he achieved great success as a business owner and working for the United States Senate. Okay, would you please turn to page 32 in your reader? And this is the beginning of Rosa Parks' My Story, not just another little girl, by Rosa Parks with Jim Haskins. So they collaborated together to write this, which would be common for a memoir, which is a memory of something that happened. So Rosa Parks was the famous person, where she had worked a whole day and she had stood on her feet, and she was an older lady and she was very tired, and she sat down on the bus and was riding home. There were no more bus seats, and it was customary that if a white person comes on the bus, that Black people would have to give up their seat to them. And Rosa Parks didn't want to give up her seat to this one gentleman, and she said no. She's like, I've worked a full day too. I deserve the seat as much as you do. So it was quite an amazing, inspiring day. Okay, so top of page 32. I was about 6 when I started school. Sylvester started a year later when he was around 5. We went to the one teacher Black school in Pine Lavelle in a little frame schoolhouse that was just a short distance from where we lived. It was near our church, the Mount Zion AME Church, right in the churchyard. In many places, the church was used as the school, but in Pine Level, we had a separate schoolhouse on the church grounds. We had first grade to 6th grade, and there was about 50 to 60 children in the one room. We sat in separate rows by age, and at certain times, the larger students would go up to read or recite, and then at other times, it was the smaller one's turn. So right away, I'm noticing with the words I and me and we, that this is told from first person point of view, which it's from Rosa Parks' point of view. Okay, second paragraph on page 32. My first teacher was Miss Sally Hill, and she was very nice. I remember she was a light brown-skinned lady, and she had really large eyes. When the children would tease me or say something to me about how small I would start crying, and I would go up and sit with her, and sometimes she would call me up and talk with me. I was already reading when I started school. My mother taught me at home. She was really my first teacher. I don't remember when I first started reading, but I must have been 3 or 4. I was very fond of books, and I liked to read and I liked to count. I thought it was something great to be able to take a book and sit down and read, or what I thought was reading. Any books I found where I couldn't read the words, I made up a story about it and talked about the pictures. That's fun. Okay, so now from the beginning, we can see that it's first person point of view. Now I want to think about your school experience, and just for a moment, think about how is Rosa Parks' experience of school different from your experience with school? Now I'd like you to think about, was there anything similar with your experiences with school? Do you think all the schools around Pine Level were the same as Rosa Parks School? So let me talk this through. So from the context of segregation and the fact that she used the words Black school, I am guessing that there must have been a white school that the Georgia public schools paid for, and that they would have been different from that. They might have been better schools with better teachers and better experiences. Okay, I'm on the top of page 33. Now I know I'm still projecting the other page. All right. Oh, you can even see a picture there. I like that picture. That must be your home or maybe the school. Don't know. Okay, top of page 33. At school, I liked fairy tales and Mother Goose rhymes. I remember trying to find Little Red Riding Hood because someone had said it was a nice book to read. No matter what Miss Hill gave me to read, I would sit down and read the whole book, not just a page or two. And then I would tell her I finished the book, that I started learning to write, making my letters. I had Miss Hill for only a year. After that, Mrs. Bala McMillan was our teacher. We called her Miss Bala. She had been a teacher for a long time and had taught my mother when she was a girl. My mother had a picture of the same little school. Oh, there's the picture. With the students in front of the schoolhouse on the steps, in rows on the steps and down on the ground. The shorter ones and the boys were on their knees on the ground. My mother never wanted me to show it to anybody because it was a real battered up old picture, but I liked it. I used to take my magnifying glass and look at the faces, which were very small. I liked Miss Bala and I liked school. We had fun there. At recess, the girls would play what we call ring games, like Little Sally Walker sitting in the saucer, Rise, Sally, rise, and ring around the roses. The boys would play ball. I don't think the girls played much ball at school. We used to play at home a little bit. My mom would buy us a ball, and we'd have to be very careful because pretty soon a rubber ball would be lost. It didn't last long. We called what we played baseball. I wasn't too active in it, but I tried to be active. I'd fall down and get hurt. Oh, because if I tried to be active, I'd fall down and get hurt. I wasn't very good when it came to running sports. Some of the older boys at school were very good at running sports and playing ball. They were also the ones who were responsible for wood. And I'm going to stop there. Dun, dun, dun. Okay. So look at the part of the passage on 33 that says, we used to play at home a little bit. My mother would buy us a ball, and we'd have to be very careful because pretty soon a rubber ball would be lost. It didn't last too long. What can you infer about Rosa Parks' family and how she lived from those three sentences? Think for a moment. I'm thinking that because mom could only afford one ball at a time, that perhaps the family did not have a lot of money and they didn't have a lot of toys to play with. So if they lost the rubber ball, they would be out of luck for playing with the toys until the next time that maybe mom could afford having more money for the ball. Now, I have a quotation from the introduction. Let me use the whiteboard here. Okay, so let me type this quotation from the text, and notice I am going to begin with quotation marks. Okay, so here is the quotation. For half of my life, there were laws and customs in the South that kept African Americans segregated from Caucasians and allowed white people to treat Black people without any respect. Oh, respect. Respect. I never thought this was fair. And then it keeps going. I'm just going to put ... and end quote. So for half of my life, there were laws and customs in the South that kept African Americans segregated or separated from Caucasians. Remember, that's white people, and allowed white people to treat Black people without any respect. I never thought that this was fair. Now, in lesson 7, you learned a little bit about point of view. And I want you to think about Rosa Parks' point of view about segregation. What does she think? Just think a moment. She didn't like it, right? She says, I never thought it was fair. Well, Rosa Parks fought for against the injustice of most of her life. And she didn't like that things were unfair and unjust. And so that's one of the most important points of the books, is that she spent a lot of her life fighting for what was right. So as you read the next section of the Rosa Parks narrative, you are going to look for evidence that she brings to support her important point about segregation. So this, we have a theme of fighting for what you believe in. So that's pretty cool. We've got a new theme that we are investigating. So let me go to projection 8.1. Okay, don't open your books yet. Okay. So on page 8.1, we are going to be gathering evidence from the text, actual quotes from the text. Now remember, it doesn't become a quote until you find it. You're going to find a regular sentence from the text that is evidence for segregation and injustice. And you are going to put quotations around it and write the whole thing. And then you're going to say why it is evidence of injustice and segregation. So now, would you turn to activity page 8.1 in your workbook? It's page, oh, I don't have the page number. Okay, 8.1 in your activity workbook. Okay, finding evidence. Follow as your teacher models finding evidence from the text to support Rosa Parks' point of view about segregation. Then read the excerpt below with the partner, which we're not going to do partners this time, pausing to underline the evidence of injustice of segregation. When you have finished reading the excerpt, copy your underlined quotes into the first column, and in the second column, list the evidence of injustice found in the quotes. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to think as I read. Reader page 32. Hold on one second. I think I have it in my... Oh, hold on. Okay. Aha, okay, very good. The quote was here. I didn't have to type it. All right. Okay, so now I'm going to model some different things from this. So would you turn in your reader to page 32? So I am going to model how you're going to fill out this chart here with the very beginning. So take a look here. Oh, it does let me zoom in. This is awesome. Or maybe only a little bit. Okay, so now I was about 6 when I started school. We went to the one teacher Black school in Pine Level in a little frame schoolhouse. Okay, I just read that Rosa Parks went to a Black school. That sounds like it's related to segregation. So I would underline these right here. So let me underline it right here. So this is what I would underline, and it's not going to let me underline it, but that's what you would as well. We went to the one teacher Black school. It was near our church, the Mount Zion AME church, right in the churchyard. in many places the church was used as a school, but in Pine Level we had separate schoolhouse on the church grounds. We had first grade to sixth grade, and there were about 50 to 60 children in one room. So I would underline we had first grade to sixth grade, and there were about 50 to 60 children in our room. I would underline that because 50 or 60 students is a lot. I also read that there was only one teacher for all those students of the different grade levels. So you'd have a kindergartner in, or first grader in with a sixth grader. So that doesn't sound fair to me. So I would underline those sentences. So if I were doing this part, now you don't have that. I think you're going to be doing a separate section, but this is what I would do. So I would do quotations and put, I was about 6. Actually, you don't need that part. You said, we went to the one teacher Black school in Pine Level in a tiny, no, has to be the exact words, little frame schoolhouse. And then you explain, how is that evidence of segregation? Having a Black school where only the Black children go is evidence of segregation. Okay, then the next one that I underlined in this section was, and don't write this in your book because I think you have a different section. We had first grade to sixth grade, and there were about 50 to 60 children in one room. All right, so, oh, I forgot end quotes. That's very important. So how does that show segregation? Well, 50 students in one room is a lot. Also, teaching first graders with sixth graders would not give the students a fair education. So do you see how I have the quotes and then I have the reasoning there? Okay, so all right, so we have the first two here. It actually doesn't say, let me see if it says where you're going to be reading this from. Oh, okay, so you have it here. So you're going to now read this section in the book of Rosa Parks' My Story. And you are going to read this section and underline examples of segregation. And what I'm going to do is I am going to read it to you just to help you out a little bit since we're not doing the partner reading right now. So as I read this, would you underline evidence of segregation, things that are not fair to Blacks? Rosa Parks' My Story. Some of the older boys at school were very good at running, sports, and playing ball. They were also the ones who were responsible for wood at the school. The larger boys would go and cut the wood and bring it in. Sometimes a parent would load a wagon up with some wood and bring it to the school. The boys would load the wagon and bring the wood inside. That's to heat the schoolhouse. They didn't have to do this at the white school. The town or country took care of heating at the white school. I remember that when I was very young, they built a new school for the white children, not very far from where we lived. And of course, we had to pass by it. It was a nice brick building and still stands there today. I found out later that it was built with public money, including taxes paid by both whites and Blacks. Black people had to build and heat their own schools without the help of the town or country or state. Another difference between our school and the white school was that we went only for 5 months, while they went for 9 months. So hint, that might be another good quote for your chart. Many of the Black children were needed by their families to plow and plant in the spring and harvest in the fall. Their families were sharecroppers like my grandparents' neighbors. Sharecroppers worked land owned by plantation owners, and they got to keep a portion of the crop they grew. The rest they had to give to the owner of the plantation, so they needed their children to help. At the time I started school, we went only from late fall to early spring. So they didn't go as long, which means they wouldn't have learned as much as the other kids. Okay, next page. I was aware of the big difference between Blacks and whites by the time I started school. I had heard my grandfather's stories about how badly he was treated by the white overseer when he was a boy. My mother told me stories that the old people had told her about slavery times. I remember she told me that the slaves had to fool the white people into thinking they were happy. The white people would get angry if the slaves acted unhappy. They would also treat the slaves better if they thought the slaves liked white people. When white people died, their slaves would have to pretend to be very sorry. The slaves would spit on their fingers and use it to wet their cheeks like it was tears. They'd do it right in front of the little slave children, and then the children would do the same thing in the presence of the grieving white people. I was glad that I did not live in the slavery times, but I knew the conditions of life for my family and me were in some ways not much better than during slavery. I realized we went to a different school than the white children, and that the school we went to was not as good as theirs. Ours didn't have any glass windows, but instead we had little wooden shutters. Their windows had glass panes. Some of the white children rode a bus to school. There were no school buses for Black children. I remember when we walked to school, sometimes the bus carrying the white children would come by, and the white children would throw trash out the windows at us. After a while, when we would see the white school bus coming, we would just get off the road and walk in the fields a little bit distant from the road. We didn't have any of what they call civil rights back then. So there was no way to protest and nobody to protest to. It was just a matter of survival, like getting off the road so we could exist day to day. Okay, so you are going to find a couple more quotes from the text, and they've given you a lot of spaces for quotes. So I would say if you find 2 quotes that they have and tell me why it's an evidence of segregation, that would be good to me. Now, if you look here, it says, I was about 6 when I started school. Sylvester started a year later when he was around 5. Okay, so that was my first example. And then we had first grade to 6th grade, and there was about 50 to 60 children in one room. So notice how I put the page number where the quote was found. If you could do that as well, that would be amazing. So I like you to also put the page number. And then for evidence, it says school for African Americans was very crowded, only one teacher for 50 to 60 students, and all ages studied together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause my video for just about 10 minutes. And then what I would like you to do is choose 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 quotes. No, if you could choose 2 quotes and do a really good job, remember to write a little smaller so you can fit your quotes in there. Don't forget your quotation marks. Then you can explain why it shows a segregation and why it's unfair. So if you could just do 2, 1 and 2, and then you will not have to do the second page at all of quotes and evidence. Okay, so let me see if I can pause my recording. I can. So I'm going to pause my recording now. If you are someone that gets done early, what I would like you to do is work on your IXLs. Please remember there are 3 new IXLs due for Friday, which would be 9 total. All right, I'm going to pause my recording now. You're working on 8.1. Okay, welcome back. All right, so I gave you 10 minutes to finish up those quotes, and hopefully you came up with 2 strong quotes and then why they either showed segregation and unfairness. Okay, so now we're going to work on your writing narratives for a little bit. And this time we are going to incorporate some point of view and evidence that support your point of view, much like Rosa Parks' selection we read today. Now, you will still be continuing on with your personal narrative, and your writing today will be persuasive, which means trying to write to convince the reader of something. Like Rosa Parks, you will bring your evidence to support a point of view about a personal experience. So, if you want to look at page 6.6, where you had your last name narrative. So go to activity page 6.6. I don't think I know the page number. No, I don't. But if you remember, you were to either imagine a good friend of your family is having a baby, write to convince the friend to give the baby your name. What does your baby name say about you? And write about a time when someone got your name wrong. So you're on 6.6. So this is what we're going to write about today. So I want you to take a look at this graphic organizer. It's called Building Birdhouses is the Best Hobby. So this is the person's point of view or opinion, right? Not everybody likes to build birdhouses. Many other people like different hobbies, but this person thinks that building birdhouses is the best hobby. So here is the person's evidence. You can meet new people. So the personal experience that proves it is, I met my best friend at a birdhouse convention. All right, next piece of evidence, you get closer to nature. Your personal experience that proves your evidence. Every morning, I spend a few minutes outside watching the birds feed at my birdhouse. Then the next piece of evidence, you learn important skills. Here is the piece of evidence, the personal experience. Building birdhouses helped me learn about carpentry, and now I'm working on building a go-kart. Now, every time that you have an opinion, there's a personal experience that is why you think that. So that's what we're going to be thinking about and adding to your personal narrative today. Some personal experiences that help make it even stronger. So we're going to take a look at writing a narrative. Writing a narrative here with evidence. So choose a topic from one of the prompts below. Complete at least 2 rows of the graphic organizer and then write a personal narrative about the topic. So let me explain it first, and then we'll take a look at the graphic organizer. Best or worst place? Worst place. 1, what's the best place you have ever visited and why? Write to convince a friend to go there. Make sure to bring evidence from your visit to support your point of view about the place. 2, what's the worst place you have ever visited and why? Write to convince a friend not to go there. Make sure to bring evidence from your visit to support your point of view about the place. Best gift given or worst gift received. 3, what's the best gift you've ever given and why? Describe the gift in your experience giving it. Make sure to bring evidence to support your point of view about the gift. 4, what's the worst gift you've ever received and why? Describe the gift in your experience receiving it. Make sure to bring evidence to support your point of view about the gift. Okay. So here is where you write your topic. So you're choosing either the best place or worst place, best gift or worst gift. And that's what you will write there. And if you already know, you can go ahead and write your topic down right now. Then you're going to write what about it was the worst. Why did you not like the thing, or why did you like it? So what made it the best or worst? And they have 4. And I do want you to come up with 4 things that made it the best or the worst. Maybe the toy, maybe if you put worst gift, you write that the gift, what it was, and then say that it broke. It was of poor quality. And then your personal experience would be, you opened it up, you put the batteries in, and instantly what happened. So you want to have a personal experience story to go with your evidence. And yes, it can be funny. So, and try to use your details, because remember, the more detailed it is, the better it is going to be, the better your narrative. Okay. So let me just double check the other ones. Oh, and then after you have all of them filled in, not before, all of them filled in, because I will be checking for that, I want you to then write your personal narrative. Your topic sentence will be, the best gift I ever received was blah, blah, blah. The worst gift I ever received was blah, blah, blah. The best place I ever visited was da 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 da. The worst place I ever visited was da 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 da. And then you can write your evidence, your personal experience, evidence, personal experience, evidence, personal experience, evidence, personal experience. And if you are an expert writer, you can write your conclusion and wrap up. Make an overall generalization about that gift, or an overall generalization about that place. Okay, it looks like you have about a half hour left. So what I'd like you to do is go ahead and work on these 2 pages and make sure that you fully complete this activity. I will be double checking when I get back, and I'm excited to read them, and we'll share them when I get back too. Now, one more thing I wanted to say, don't forget, for homework, you need to read for 20 minutes. Don't forget your reading log. I did give those to you on Monday. And then I would like you to finish those IXLs. Well, not finish, start on them. There are 3 more due for this Friday, 9 total. And I love how many people are going for the SMART score of 100. Just amazing. Okay, keep up the good work. I miss you, and I will see you on Monday. All right, bye for now. We'll see you soon.